Hey, welcome back. You're probably following right on along with me, but just in case you're not, we just got through Jesus speaking in some parables, and then Jesus just crossed the river, the lake, and remember I spoke to you about when he's on one side it's Jewish territory, on the other it's Gentile. So that big storm that happened is where they were crossing over. And so right now we're going to jump into Matthew 8:28 through 34. Mark 5, 1 through 20. We finished up Mark 4 in the last video. And then in Luke 8, 26 through 39, continuing our chronology here. I will go ahead and read all three of these stories, even though they're very similar. Remember, we just kind of put it together cohesively. I want to point out some things that might come up as a discrepancy and show you how it's not, or contradicting anything like that, and show you how it's not, and point out just a couple of things in each one of these, and we'll go over some notes at the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and read these to you. I will always start in Matthew, so let me jump on over there to Matthew. So we're in Matthew 8:28. When he had come to the other side, to the country of Gergesenes, I'm so sorry if I butchered that. Say that 5 times. There he met 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. They suddenly cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Jesus, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now a good way off from them there was a herd of many swine feeding. So the demons begged him, saying, "If you cast us out, permit us to go that way into the swine." And he said to them, "Go." So when they had come out, they went into the herd of swine. And suddenly the whole herd of swine ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and perished in the water. Then those who kept with them fled. Those who kept them fled. So those are going to be the people who tended the pigs. Okay? And they went away into the city and told everything, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they begged him to depart from their region. They're scared. Let's go on to Mark here. And in Mark 5:1. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of Gadarenes. Same thing. Sorry if I'm butchering that. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, day and night, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice, saying, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, the Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, that you do not torment me." For he said to him, "Come out of that man, unclean spirit." And then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains. So all of the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and drowned in the sea. So that those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that happened. That they came to Jesus, saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who saw it told them how it happened, and who had been demon-possessed, and about the swine, and they began to plead with him to depart their region. When he got into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might go with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends, and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he has had compassion on you." And he departed and began to proclaim it in Decapolis, all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. Now let's jump over to Luke, and we are in Luke 8:26. Then they sailed to the country of Gadarenes, which is the opposite of Galilee. And when he stepped out on the land, there he met a certain man from the city who had demons. For a long time he wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him. With a loud voice said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." for he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for it had often seized him, and he kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles, and he broke the bonds, and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, saying, What is your name? And he said, Legion, because many demons had entered him, and they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. Now a herd of many swine was feeding there on the mountain, so they begged him that he would permit them to enter, and he permitted them. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the lake and drowned. When those who fed them saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what had happened, and came to Jesus, and found the man from whom the demon had departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. They also, who had seen it, and told them by what means who had been demon-possessed was healed. Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, Return to your own house, and tell what great things God has done for you. And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. This is kind of a neat story. So starting right off the bat in Matthew, let's jump back over there. You have, it says, the country of Gerasenes, right? And in Mark and Luke, we're told the country of the Gadarenes. Okay, so look it up for a quick reference. I have, you can see it very easily. This is not a contradiction of location. One is a city area of the other country region. So Missouri, United States, right? Or Rolla, Missouri, right? We have a smaller area compared to a region. It is the same place. And so I believe it's called Garada. And so let me, Gadara. And so we saw in, let's see, where did we read in, I think we jumped over it into Mark. And so began to plead with them. Okay, yep, the last verse in Mark that we read here. Okay, and he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and marveled. So Gadara is a location in Decapolis. While we don't have, the Bible doesn't specifically list all of the stories, we do have other historical texts that coincide with scripture here, and so which is where we gather a lot of information that we have when we're looking through the lenses of studying scripture, right? We look through ancient and historical lenses, text, co-text, things like that, right, to be able to understand what's happening. And so when we're doing a deep study, remember, we only do this when we're doing this type of study. We know that the Word of God is simple enough for a child to understand, okay? That is meaning the deity of Christ, right? What God did to come for and for his people, what he did for his people. And so it's when we're really diving in for our own personal study and relationship with God that we do this type of reading and studying. So anyway, that's the first thing that we saw there. This is not a contradiction of location. This is the same area. And we know several things actually kind of tie into this. So the city of Gadara, which is a part of the Decapolis, right, is a primarily made up of Gentiles, okay, which that goes back and coincides with what I was telling you when right here in 5:1 they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes, right? When he's on one side of the sea, we have the Jews. When he's on the other side of the sea, we have the Gentiles. And so we know that he is in the Gentile territory, so we cross back over, and then we know that Gadara and the Gadarenes is Gentile territory, and we know that those are a part of the Decapolis. So we have several things that we just blended together that we didn't specifically get just from reading, Mark 1 through 10, whatever, right? We had to use other historical text to understand and know that. But now we have a better idea of our bearings, right? We have location, we have context, right? And so that's my big thing. Context gives clarity. And so we can learn so much when we're in the proper place and time. And so moving on here. So one, we have a demon-possessed man, and in 2, we have demon-possessed men. Different stories? No. right? What we want to focus on, and what the two authors focus on, is the superhuman nature of one of them. So there were obviously more than one, was more than one demon-possessed man, but the Spirit decided to focus on this primary story in these three Gospels of this one superhuman, right? And we find out why. Obviously, he had a legion of demons within him. And so they focus on this story. And so again, not a contradiction between the Gospels and where Jesus was and who he was talking to, maybe two different places. No. Okay, it's just that these two writers focused in, and even the third author still focused in on the one, right, where we're getting our details from. Okay, so we know that he has superhuman strength, right? He broke the bonds and the chains. Nothing could keep him tied down. He was driven into the wilderness. He was cutting himself with stones regularly. And so we know that he's superhuman. He cannot be tamed, right? And so this is interesting, and we've touched on it before here. Okay, the demons, okay, understand who Jesus is. They understand and recognize his deity instantly, right? Not only from the other exorcisms that he's performed, right? So when he exorcises demons there, right? They immediately call him out, right? As Lord. And Jesus rejects them, rebukes them, tells them to be quiet because he doesn't want his reputation to be spread off of the word of a demon, right? And so here, immediately, Jesus only so much as approaches them, okay? And they immediately know who Jesus is. And the reason we know that we recognize his deity is because in right here, so in Matthew 6, 5:6, Mark. Let's get that together. Mark 5:6. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. They know that the only deity that can be worshipped is God. Okay? And they're recognizing Jesus as being the one that's being worshipped, right? They fell down and worshipped him. And so they're recognizing the deity there. Only God deserves praise, right? These demons and or anybody of the Jews would not bow down and worship a mere man. Okay, so they are immediately recognizing that Jesus is God. Okay, it's kind of a neat thing. Something to touch on here too is that the demons are fully aware of their ultimate destination. And so in one of them we have here that some of them are don't cast us away, don't cast us out. I think it was Luke here that tells them out into the abyss. Yeah, and so in Luke it says, and they begged him that they would not command him to go out into the abyss. Not even the demons. This is such an unpleasant place. Not even the demons want to go there, right? And so we know that there are certain hierarchies, what's a good word for it? Levels, positions, I don't know, the right kind of terminology for that, of heaven and hell, right? And so just think of being tormented, right? I said this in class too. I gave the example of people, so hurt people, right? So somebody that's tormented typically would be someone, and so a bully is usually being bullied at home, right? And so these demons are being tormented in hell, right? We know it's gnashing of teeth and and burning and so darkness, separation, right? So we know that they're being tormented in hell. They would rather do the tormenting. They would rather be on earth and be stuck in a human or a swine, right? A pig. They'd rather be in a pig than be cast out into the abyss, right? Where they're now the tormented. And so the reason I say there's levels and stuff, I didn't quite cohesively put all that together, but that's because even though they're demons and they're able to take over and have certain jobs and do things, they are also still being tormented. And so that's something to take note of there. Something we don't know, and we can't really begin to say why. We don't really have a reason to, right? Remember, some things we just can't answer, is why did Jesus give the demons what they wanted, right? They asked, he obliged. We don't know. Right? That's a question for Jesus one day. We really don't have any reason to speculate that answer, right? We just kind of trust in and have our faith in the authority of God and his word, and what he meant to do here in the sharing of this story. And so we don't really need to know why, but it is something curious to pick up on that they asked. There was no other dialogue, arguing, right? They begged him and asked him, and then Jesus said, okay, and he did it. And so again, we're nowhere in the Gentile territory here. So a legion in the Roman military can be upwards of 6,000 men. Okay, that tells you how many demons were in this man. It's unfathomable that we can't even imagine what that's like. We typically picture being possessed as one, right? As one demon kind of taking you over. At least I do. I would not imagine a legion, right? That goes to show this man's super strength, right? This is why he was just inhuman. Everything about him was not functioning as a human any longer. And so because he had a legion in them, and in Mark's story, I believe, he tells us that in Mark's story, they tell us that there are about 2,000 swine. So some quick math, that's about 3 demons per pig, right? And so that's a lot. Imagine being in an area, just even imagine the amount of that, 2,000 pigs right there in front of you, right? This is a lot that Jesus cast out of one man into that herd. And they immediately all went to the sea and died anyway, right? And so I'm not going to begin to tell you what happens from there because I don't know, right? I would assume that they went ahead and went on to the abyss, but I don't know. And so they're cast out. They don't want to go to the abyss, right? And so the city asks him to leave, right? And so which also kind of coincides with what we were talking about with the city and the region area. I think all 3 accounts actually tell us here at the end of each story that they went out into the city and the country, or into that region, right? So all of them named, right? Then he began to plead with them to depart from their region. Let's see. Okay, right here in 14. So those who fed the swine, right, they fled and told it in the city and in the country, right? So they're naming that city and that country, that region area, okay? And so that just backs up and affirms what we were talking about those locations earlier on. And so they're blown away. They want him to leave, right? They're scared. They just watched this. They just watched 2,000 of their swine. One of the ladies in class mentioned, imagine your entire livelihood just got shipped off into the sea, right? I mean, this is how long it takes to raise that much livestock, and all these demons were just casting them and set off into the sea. So you can only imagine that they're not too impressed with what's going on right there. But Jesus here tells this man, remember, on the Gentile side, right? Jew side, tell no one. The Gentile side, he says, go. He wants to go with him. He's been healed, and he's like, take me with you back to your people, your side, right? Your place. And Jesus says, no, I want you to go back to your people and tell them what God has done for you. And so tell everyone about this amazing miracle of what God has done for you. I hope that answers some of your questions if you had them, or maybe you just thought of them as I was reading along to you this time. Go in and dig in for yourself and see how these stories compare through the Gospels, and do some research so that you can see these things for yourself. And so anyway, that wraps up for this video.